Hi everyone, I'm Adam Chu. Today I'll talk about CoPoS. There are many variants of CoPoS now, mainly CoPoS itself and something called co-op. I've covered both CoPoS and co-op before. This episode focuses on CoPoS. As the name implies, CoPoS uses an RDL formed on a panel. GPUs and HBM are attached at this panel level to form the RDL, then bridged to an ABF substrate and finally mounted on a PCB. Its main advantages come from the panel's large size, higher throughput, and lower cost. Functionally, it's almost identical to CoPoS, except that it's moved from wafer level to panel level. On this slide, we'll look at public explanations of CoPoS found online. CoPoS essentially panelizes CoPoS, converting CoPoS from a wafer-type implementation into a panel-level carrier. As shown, a 300mm wafer is much smaller than a 510mm, 515mm panel. In the same production time, you can produce many more dies on a panel, so costs drop and capacity rises. CoPoS is currently popular for generative AI, but because CoPoS is wafer level, the maximum die count it can build is limited. If we move to panels, we can increase the die count in the same time, better meeting market demand for generative AI. The process essentially changes circles into squares, wafers into panels. Glass has lower cost than silicon and better thermal stability. Glass CTE, coefficient of thermal expansion, is closer to silicon, so warpage should be reduced. Those are the theoretical benefits. Here's a schematic of CoPoS. Wafers become panels and area increases. GPUs and HBMs are bonded together at the panel level. You'll also see TGVs, through glass vias. Next slide. Georgia Tech published information mentioning industry involvement. Keywords include Georgia Tech, Intel, and Samsung participating in related research. They show TSMC's CoPoS and their CoPoS concept, a glass substrate directly attaching GPUs and HBMs. Because glass panels are large, the goal is to integrate many GPUs and HBMs to increase theoretical compute capacity, an idea both industry and academia are exploring. Now what about TSMC's CoPoS? TSMC's CoPoS is essentially an extension of CoPoS-L to panel level. Internally, it's nearly identical. Compute dies and HBM on the top table, with IVR active dies, LSI DTC dies in bottom layers. The same functions NVIDIA needs, so those elements can't be dropped. For example, NVIDIA's GP300 CoPoS-L package has 2 GPUs and 8 HBM stacks. Because the 2 GPUs need to talk to each other with very high bandwidth, on the order of 10 terabits per second, that requires extremely fine routing with many lanes. Achieving 10 terabits per second requires very dense traces, typically 0.8 micrometers width and space. Connecting GPUs to HBM also needs fine traces because channel counts can reach 2048. Fine line width is a must for CoPoS to meet NVIDIA's high compute and bandwidth needs. Glass interposers face significant challenges for this reason. First, CoPoS targets generative AI and is primarily built for NVIDIA. It must integrate GPUs, HBM, and many active and passive components. Second, submicron routing, 1 micrometers, is required. Even on wafer-level interposers, achieving acceptable yield with such fine pitch is already very difficult. Moving to an even larger panel makes yield even harder. TSMC moved from CoPoS-S to CoPoS-L because wafer-level fine routing yields were unmanageable. A larger panel would only worsen yield. Therefore, I believe panel-level fine-line production is infeasible. Another issue is passive components like IVRs and DTC capacitors, which are necessary for power integrity, PI. A continuous glass panel makes it difficult to embed IVR or DTC elements, so the PI solution is inadequate. From these points alone, a glass panel CoPoS would struggle to meet NVIDIA and other high-end AI product requirements. So what will CoPoS look like? My personal guess is that it will closely resemble TSMC's CoPoS-L process as much as possible. In earlier CoPoS-L work, I used 301mm glass. Theoretically, process changes will be minimal, mainly converting from wafer to panel, and the finished product would be a CoPoS-L that's process-wise similar to CoPoS-L. That's my share for today. If you have questions, leave a comment, and I'll see you next time.